Happy New Year, basement buddies. We've already celebrated last year's best anime and its finest trash, but now it's finally time to dig through the real garbage. These are the worst things that happened to anime in 2025, brought to you by all of you. That, of course, means everyone who supports us on Patreon, where you can watch clean cuts of everything YouTube makes us censor for just $1 a month, but also anyone who hits the like button, leaves a comment, subscribes, or rings the notification bell, or just watches the videos in general. It wouldn't be possible to do what I do without all of you guys, and I am grateful to every single one of you. Though I am slightly more grateful the more of all of those things I just said that you do, so please consider doing them. And also please consider watching me, Glass Reflection, and our buddy Miles talking at length about all the anime from last year, good and bad, on the latest episode of our podcast, Quest for the Best. Do that later though, cause right now we're on a quest for the worst. And just like how we kicked off the best of year list by breaking my rule against short series, I'm breaking my no sequels rule here for One Punch Man Season 3, cause there's no way we weren't gonna talk about this.
Oi, 今からてめえを。すまん、俺も共犯だからこれ以上絡むのは勘弁して。
Janky, ugly, barely animated at points, and straight up unfinished at others, to call the latest season of One Punch Man a disappointment, even compared to Season 2, would be a gross understatement. Almost as gross as the corporate mismanagement on the production committee level that, according to an excellent video from Sakuga Blog's Kevin and Totally Not Mark, gave the beleaguered animators at JC staff less than a year to produce the entire thing. Unacceptable conditions for any series, let alone one of the single most hyped titles on Shonen Jump's entire roster. Small wonder then that so many fans are frothing at the mouth furious over how it all turned out, though unfortunately, far too much of that anger has been piled on the staff crunching their asses off to salvage whatever they can from this sinking ship, instead of the executives who plowed it straight into a shitberg full steam ahead. Which is a big part of why this list is called the worst things to happen to anime in 2025 instead of just the worst anime. For as bad as One Punch Man itself undeniably is, its impact on anime discourse has been worse. The director straight up deleted his Twitter over the harassment he's been facing, which is absolutely what it is. Saying you wish the KyoAni fire happened to JC staff instead definitely is not criticism, and neither is telling veteran animators that they need to leave the industry over a few bad episodes when they were working harder to make the best of this nightmare situation in any given week than the people deliberately farming their ordeal for engagement have through their entire careers. Just so we're clear, that is not a jab at all commentary content. I have immense respect for creators like Moist Critical who can work without the safety net of a script and still make good stuff, but only the ones who actually bother to read up on topics before yapping about them into their webcams, which is how Charlie was able to levy so much fair criticism at One Punch Man Season 3 without attacking the people suffering most from the project's gross mismanagement. Because again, it is a product worthy of much criticism, a very bad anime that stings all the more for how good we know it can be. Even though industry circumstances beyond anyone's control made it impossible to rebottle Season 1's lightning, there is no excuse for the committee to give the animators this little time to adapt something this beloved. See also Uzumaki and Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and if you have seen Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, that does make it abundantly clear just how much further One Punch Man could have fallen without all the nice Sakuga and illustrations that the animators did have time to draw, and the storyboards that accounted for all the time that they wouldn't have in advance. I'll take janky PowerPoints with nice composition and posing over janky off-center PowerPoints of guys just sort of awkwardly standing there any day of the week, and at least they didn't f*** up the animation and the manga's story, which is why I can't in good conscience put this any lower than 10th place. I have no doubt that it's the worst anime a lot of you, quite possibly the majority of all anime fans, have ever seen, but that's only because most anime fans don't go out of their way to watch Gohan's shows. In a post-Porygon dimmed anime world, Gohan's is the only studio whose work consistently makes the phrase "that hurt to watch" completely non-hyperbolic. To their credit, they have come pretty far from the motion sickness-inducing Temu Berserk shots of handshakers, but not that far. Momentary Lily may not give you a full-on migraine, but you'll still walk away from most episodes with a serious headache and a newfound appreciation for the general health benefits of slideshows. And that's before you try to wrap that aching head around the story of this post-apocalyptic, cute magical girls doing Terminator Salvations things cooking anime. No, neither of us just had a seizure. That was a completely accurate description. And honestly, if that was all I knew about it, I would immediately go watch this anime because I love crazy off-the-wall bullshit like that. Unfortunately, like all those crazy shots of waifus jumping off of walls, that story's ambition far outstrips the ability behind it. Neither the events leading up to the apocalypse nor the struggle to survive that follows are particularly interesting, and the waifus doing all the surviving and wall jumping and chibi cooking tutorials are every bit as underwritten as they are over-designed. From the very first aura that big titty Onesan auras to the very last comparison between current circumstances and video game tropes to come out of the gamer girl's insufferably annoying mouth, only one thing that any of these girls ever says or does will surprise you at all, and that's only because they had the courtesy to avoid spoiling it in the OP. Which is, admittedly, more courtesy than a lot of anime have, and while we're admitting things, I also think that OP kinda slaps. You can hear an actual clip of this song on Patreon.com! Unlike the show, it's a weird mashup that actually really works, but even though the show it's attached to absolutely doesn't, I do deeply appreciate that Momentary Lily, like pretty much every Gohan's thing, at least tries to go there. They're a studio so preoccupied with never asking if they should, they forgot to figure out if they even could. And that makes them more consistent than almost anyone else in the industry at producing the good kind of bad anime. The kind where the sheer conceptual insanity and executional ineptitude of it all wraps all the way back around to being entertaining again. Though that said, we almost had one of those for husbando enjoyers too this year in Classic Stars. Classic Stars is set in an elite private art school with a dark secret, running non-voluntary experiments on students where they inject them with the DNA of classical composers to create the ultimate boy band of super soldiers and dominate geopolitics via emerging holographic concert technology. Unfortunately, that sentence is the most interesting thing about the entire show. The twink and twunk archetypes comprising the boy band make Momentary Lily's waifu lineup look bold and creative. The overarching plot is barely a factor, at least as far as I could bring myself to watch it. The original soundtrack is dominated by J-pop remixes of classical songs that range from blandly forgettable to unbearably cringy, which is the exact same range the animation has in a fun coincidence. And the CGI dance sequences make wand dances look still bad, but not that bad. There is some possibility this one pops off after I dropped off. I do see some serious potential in the concept of Beethoven alters evil boy band, but nowhere near enough to keep putting up with the crap I did in the first few episodes. A premise this wacky should never feel that boring. Now, I'm a noble on the brink of ruin, so I might as well try mastering magic. That's a premise you expect to be boring, and boy howdy does it ever deliver. As you already guessed, like 3 words into the title, Noble on the Brink is a bog-standard lit RPG thing, notable mainly for how fast it speedruns through all the early game lit RPG bullshit you've seen a billion times before, to get to the end game lit RPG bullshit you've only seen a million times before, because most of these things never get a second season. Despite the show not being an isekai, Protag manages to achieve passive income by inventing instant ramen, master silent multicasting, and attain a personal pocket dimension all in episode 1, acquires 3 harem girls and a knighthood by the end of episode 2, then upgrades that to a barony in episode 3, and soul bonds a motherfucking dragon for good measure. Perhaps this pacing worked a little better in the web novel with 5 stat boxes between every paragraph, but whoever edited the print version must have accidentally gotten some meth in his cocaine if he thought it was even remotely acceptable there, let alone the manga or anime. I'm a sucker for a good progression fantasy, or even just an okay one. I'm currently 9 books deep in He Who Fights with Monsters, but the thing that makes them so addictive is the progression part of the fantasy. If you skip over that, all you're left with is a shitty Dragon Quest fanfic where the plot mainly consists of everyone taking turns to see who can suck Erdrick's the hardest, and this is just that animated by Studio Dean. Yet somehow, it could still be worse.
この切り株を真っ二つに切れたら冒険者になっていい。はあ！無理だよな。
Bogus skill, Fruit Master. About that time, I became able to eat unlimited numbers of skill fruits that kill you. Takes the bedrock lit RPG premise of a world with RPG-like skills and asks the riveting question, what if you got the skills from eating fruit? Are you riveted yet? Oh, right, I forgot to mention that the fruits kill you if you eat more than one of them, so if you get a bogus skill, you're kinda just for life. And you'll never guess what happened to Protag-kun. Of course, his sexy childhood friend he dreamed of adventuring with got the bestest skill ever on literally the same day, so she's immediately recruited into the Chadliest Heroes party, while his virgin ass is stuck farming fruits of both the regular and skill variety back home. But then, when his pet lolly that he has for some reason accidentally cooks him dinner with ingredients out of the don't touch these, they'll fucking kill you barrel, he realizes that his skill actually makes him, get this, able to eat unlimited numbers of skill fruits that kill you. So he does that, and then he has a bunch of skills, and everyone else only has 1 skills. So they're all like, wow, bro, how'd you get so many skills? And he's able to kick the Chad's ass and rescue the Stacy from him so they can go on adventures together and get some more skills and go on more adventures and get more skills, and eventually some other waifus show up. And do you even fucking care about any of this? Because I do not. Nothing makes me check out of a power fantasy faster than giving its hero the power to have all the powers. And no, I'm not gonna give the anime credit for locking him up for a few episodes to make the waifus do some stuff without him. It wouldn't have been a problem in the first place if they hadn't started from such an obviously terrible concept. In case you were wondering, the comedy is even cringier than the action, and if you're thinking, well, maybe at least the animation makes up for all that, you have definitely been listening to this video while multitasking. Funny story about that, though. If I had a nickel for every shitty fantasy anime with a fruit-based power system this year, I'd put them both in a Futurama side booth before watching Fartmagia again.
ちがここか。ちが出てこい。ちが探したぞおい。
Now, at first glance, some of you out there are probably inclined to jump to this anime's defense, as it bears the unmistakable exactly 6 faces of a Hiro Mashima joint. Don't be fooled, though. The story of this monster-collecting farm sim Muso thing is merely the product of 2 game designers with almost no writing experience between them, doing their best impression of the fairy tale creator's style of storytelling and humor, which, I really hope you don't think that joke is excruciatingly unfunny, because the guy with the dog phobia is the main character, and his partner Pokemon are dogs, so it comes up quite a lot. Meanwhile, the Mashi Man himself's contributions begin and end with his, quote, creative genius bringing life to Felicidad with unique character and monster designs. Really, Xseed copywriter. Unique. That's the word we're going with here. Anyway, the director of the fairy tale anime then took that entire video game and condensed it down to just 12 episodes, which went better than you'd expect pacing-wise, because it turns out when you divide nothing by 3 hours instead of 30, you still get a whole lot of nothing. You've got your typical oppressive fantasy regime opposed by the obligatory orphans from an idyllic village that gets blown up in the first act, acting as the vanguard of the rebellion for some reason, which is even more baffling than usual in this case, because the yappy-ass protag has literally never accomplished a single thing in his entire life, yet insists to anyone who will listen to him that when he does finally dig up his first poke crop, he is instantly going to become the best monster battler there ever was, and then he gets in one fight and loses and is immediately promoted to leader of the evil boss assassination squad. And I don't even have to tell you how it goes from there. They beat up a series of evil Empire generals who can turn into big scary monsters, followed by the big bad who turns into a bigger, scarier monster. But then it turns out there was an even bigger bad working behind the scenes all along, so they go beat that guy up until he turns into the biggest bad of all in space, and then they beat him up some more until world peace is achieved. A fine enough excuse to engage in a gameplay loop for a couple dozen hours, I guess, but nothing worth adapting an anime over, and even by the standards of phoned-in game commercials, Fartmagia feels phoned in as Still, better to see a mediocre game get that treatment than a story people actually cared about.
わあ、すごいですね。
大したことないです。魔法使いならみんなできます。
By all accounts, Promise of Wizard the game is actually really good, but you wouldn't know it from the anime, which is one of the boringest commercials I have ever sat through, and the only one with the audacity to dedicate most of an episode to the main character doing a gacha pull. At least as far as I've seen. The last period anime actually made a pretty funny running gag out of the characters trying to solve problems with the gacha mechanic and repeatedly pulling absolute trash, but that's not quite the same thing. It is possible that some other gacha anime made an episode out of it too, but I wouldn't really know because I don't exactly make a habit of watching these things past episode 1. Except I am fully caught up on both Uma Musume Cinderella Grey and Twisted Wonderland episode of Heartslabule, so I guess I kind of did make a habit of it this year, and that last one in particular makes for an especially unflattering comparison to this Magic Husbando Collector, where all the characters are loosely based on classic Western stories from the public domain. Admittedly, Promise of Wizard the game does have some advantages in that department due to reaching beyond your typical Disney fairy tale bubble for influences ranging from Faust to The Secret Garden to the Bible to...
クックロビンさん?
Also, it kind of accidentally lifts an anti-Semitic slur from The Merchant of Venice. And as far as anime goes, it loses in every department. Where Twisted Wonderland's focus on a small subset of the gacha roster gave it room to tell a concise story with surprisingly deep character development, Promise of Wizard's clumsy efforts to equally service every fan of every member of its insanely bloated 21-husband cast, while also juggling its whole overarching plot about how Protag-chan is the only one who can bring all the bickering twinks together in time for their annual fight with the moon, ensures that almost none of them get enough screen time to meaningfully satisfy those fans, let alone go through anything resembling an arc. And while all of those too many husbandos are drawn decently handsomely, that's only until you see them move, which you won't, generally, because this is one of those anime that's only animated sometimes is a little treat. Even so, that's not quite the dirtiest that a popular fantasy story was done this year. Out of all the dark fantasy seinen manga written by some guy whose main takeaway from Berserk was blood, revenge, and titties, Yubelblatt is definitely one of them. A pretty successful one at that, and edgy even by Berserk clone standards. How edgy, you ask? There's a reference to the horse, you know the one, in the first chapter. And by the end of the first arc, Protag's been on both ends of a semi-voluntary pegging and slaughtered hundreds of dudes for the crime of getting in his way. It's not good, but it is charmingly shameless, with a legitimately badass airships over ancient ruins aesthetic that does quite a bit to paper over the faux seinen chuniness of the writing. Its sizable fan base has been clamoring for an anime since it started way back in 2004, and you're already looking at clips of the thing, so I don't have to tell you how that went. At least in terms of preserving the badassery. This random footage probably isn't doing much to capture the severe pacing issues, which aren't quite on the level of the 7th place speedrun, but 5.4 chapters per episode is nothing to sneeze at, especially with all the samey German proper nouns this show expects you to keep track of. And it makes itself even harder to follow by completely skipping its own prologue just because it had too many phrases. This ties into another problem that you're not going to see in the footage, because Amazon Prime explicitly ordered the studio to cut it entirely from the source material. Titties, and sex in general. Which is a pretty big omission from a manga notorious for turning into straight up and in its back third. Though somehow they didn't cut the bit where a very young orphan girl is forced to put on lingerie while the hero repeatedly tells her, "Your name is PP now," and refuses to let her correct him in episode 1. But, you know, long as no one sees a titty, I'm sure the international Amazon Prime audience is gonna have no problem with that. To be fair, I actually didn't see the show catching any Diddy-ah accusations on release, but that's probably because absolutely none of the people who might make them even slightly wanted to watch it. So that's one way around the Mushoku Tensei problem, I guess. Just make the anime terrible. Not that it's even remotely comparable to that. At best, this shit would have been Goblin Slayer tier, but at its worst, which is how we got it, it's just plain sad, even more so in a year with Clevites. There are few things in this world more pathetic than a dulled-down edgelord, though off the top of my head, I can think of one. Sadly, the new Rent-A-Guff season fell exactly 4 chapters short of giving me an animated version of that meme, so it's not even worth breaking my sequel rule again to dunk on. But somehow, Reiji Miyajima and Doga Kobo managed to make something Now, don't take me as some Puritan aghast that the uh-oh stepbro anime went too far. My gripe is it didn't go nearly too far enough. As I made quite clear in my seminal video essay, The Fake Incest Harem for Cowards, Reiji's latest Love Hina-like is the most fundamentally worthless harem thing of the entire decade. A dish so safely bland, it makes English cuisine look exotic and spicy. I am loath to invoke AI when critiquing artisanal man-made slop, but if you ask ChatGPT to write a harem anime about adopted siblings, this is almost beat for beat and bar for bar exactly what it would spit out. I never thought I'd say this, but this show and the manga that follows it made me appreciate just how much soul Rent-A-Girlfriend really has. Like, at least Reiji cares enough about one waifu in that thing to draw her over his his actual wife in vacation photos and insist that Kazuya get a self-insert makeover before he's allowed to f her. Even if that's just a cheap viral marketing gimmick, which I strongly suspect that it is, it's still a memorable and creative gimmick that's probably rooted in some degree of truth. Like maybe Reiji and his editor were out drinking and he said, "Oh man, that girl's so hot, no one else should be able to have her." And then both their eyes lit up and they started outlining the whole social media campaign. Or maybe he is just legitimately psychotic. Who am I to doubt the man's honesty? Someone who's watched this show, that's fucking who. Shiunji Family Children is nothing but a soulless side hustle, a quarter-assed mix of boilerplate tropes and recycled ideas that weren't even good enough for Rent-a-Girlfriend, bodged together in whatever time Reiji had left before the latest chapter of that. Its only saving grace, the self-evident quality of its production values, but in the anime's case, those only make me hate it more. In an industry stretched well past the breaking point where every animator is run ragged on almost every project and fucking One Punch Man can't catch a break, there is no show less deserving of this much time and care. Just imagine if even a fraction of the talent and effort that was spent polishing this aggressively 5 out of 10 turd had gone into bringing One Punch Man or Apothecary Diaries up to the visual standards of their first seasons, or adding extra episodes to Gundam G-Quacks and Kowloon Generic Romance, or literally any other anime you can think of where they just clearly didn't have enough time and people to do their vision justice. Obviously, it's not quite that simple. They're not even the same studio. I guess they could have done another season of Nozaki-kun or something. But that's where my hatred really comes from. It's the anime equivalent of staring at ROM sticks and graphics cards on Newegg.com while lights flicker ominously overhead and you can faintly hear construction sounds on the new data center up the street. On that note, though, there is a second reason I called this the worst things that happened to anime in 2025. Worst place goes to in-shittification in all its shitty forms, especially the AI-generated ones.
All I need from you is your head. The rest can rot in the dirt, like the useless scrap metal that you are.
Kainon Shrug.
っていうか、橋場くんこそ運動も勉強もできて、あ、これが文武両道ってことだったかも。
It's just such a broad issue in Japan and abroad that I didn't feel right making any one anime its poster child. Especially since the most obvious choice, Twins Hinahima, is not anime at all. It wasn't drawn by Japanese hands, nor was it made for a Japanese audience, or indeed any human being with a soul, and its prompt monkeys have absolutely no history or credibility in the anime industry, so sorry. Wait, no, I'm not. Either way, doesn't count. Mechanical Marie, on the other hand, absolutely is anime. A pretty fun one, even, when director Junji Nishimura isn't tainting it and the entire legacy of Osamu Dezaki with his vile postcard hallucination freeze frames. But while I would rather watch all of Shiunji Family again than look at any of those AI abominations for even a second, they aren't the whole anime or even 2% of it. Plus, it's not even his first time doing this shit, so it didn't quite feel like the right piece of crap to sum the year up either. Besides, the worst things that AI did to anime in 2025 didn't even happen to anime from 2025.
Damn it! Everyone's crowding into this tiny space. I need space to move. Skipper, no please! No, Skipper! Hey, stay with me. You're still good enough as you are.
You piece of shit.
What?
I told you you're a piece of shit. Nothing but an overgrown fat pig.
Back in November, Amazon ran a little beta test experiment in ruining dubbed anime for everyone on a few of the highest profile as yet undubbed classics in their anime catalog. And also, the No Game No Life movie for some reason, even though it already has a dub that you can buy on Blu-ray right now.
All I need from you is your adorable head. The rest of you I will bury in the dirt, because that is exactly where scrap metal belongs.
And lest any sub-watchers get characteristically smug about that, our side of the hobby is even more vulnerable to this crap. Machine-translated subs have been worming their way onto Crunchyroll and other platforms for years now, though they are always removed after the inevitable backlash. Most recently, they completely ruined the debut of Studio Gokumi's summer original Necronomicon and the Cosmic Horror Show, whose mashup of SAO, Fall Guys, and the Cthulhu mythos wasn't great, but certainly deserved better than the 5.59 score that it launched with due to being literally incomprehensible. Now, that actually wasn't Crunchyroll's fault. Sometimes production committees force streamers to use their provided subtitles even if they suck, but the busted-ass subs we saw on literally every new anime at the start of fall absolutely were. A result of Crunchyroll transitioning what's left of their translation department from open source software designed explicitly for anime to the same one-size-fits-all crap employed by every other streaming site that can't handle translating on-screen signs or multiple characters speaking over each other or any of the other little things that make anime watchable. All part of a long-term plan to reduce their reliance on fansub-trained freelancers in favor of the same bulk translation services that do shitty subs like these for Netflix and other streamers. Sources inside the company have confirmed that Crunchyroll is still moving forward with these plans even after the backlash, which wasn't quite big enough to stop them, and we may start seeing the results on anime released as early as the current winter season. I made a short explaining more about the situation, linked in the doobly-doo, if you want to maybe help make a larger backlash to do something about it before it's too late. But all of these problems are really just symptoms of a much larger one, which is that the purpose of companies is not to meet consumer demands for goods and services at the most broadly acceptable price point that still covers their expenses, like how the liars at your school told you it's supposed to work, but rather to perpetually inflate their own stock prices to create infinite returns on their shareholders' speculative investments. This in turn requires companies to show growth in profits every year and quarter forever, even if the markets become effectively saturated due to, say, everyone watching anime during a pandemic, or just, you know, the inevitable reality of living on a finite planet. Either way, from there, the only way to really keep the line going up outside of Ponzi schemes is to cut corners and raise prices, paying fewer people less and less to create worse and worse products that we, in turn, must pay more and more for every year and every quarter forever, or at least until the uncontrolled cancer economy eats our civilization alive. So yeah, that's the worst thing that happened to anime, and also everything this year, and last year, and next year, and the year after that, and yeah, you get it. I'm sure in 2026 I'll just go back to laughing at dumb writing and bad production values to numb the terrible awareness, but this year it got a little too terrible and close to home to not, you know, scream about it a little. On the bright side, though, enough people did scream at Amazon to make those AI dubs lost media already, which is a nice reminder that they only have the power to ruin everything so long as we let them. And hey, some things are still really good, like the best and trashiest anime of 2025, which you can watch my videos about both of those on screen right now, not to mention all the good new anime coming out next season, which you'll get to see not one, but 2 videos about in the coming weeks. I'm Geoff Thew, professional anime dumpster diver, saying see you then.